welcome to today's edition of Small Business Breakthroughs presented by the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. Today, we're excited to have Todd Wilson. He's the owner and CEO of Accelerated Laboratory Logistics, and we're going to talk about his experience, his story, and the company, as well as a new venture that he's got, the Columbus Museum of African American History and Culture. So this will be a pretty cool episode, and we'll kind of go and jump in here in just 1 second. Prior to that, I want to mention the partnership we have with the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. The Dublin Entrepreneurial Center is a facility in Dublin. It's been here for over 15 years. It is in Metro Place South, and it provides everything from walled office space for entrepreneurial ventures to virtual office space. So maybe you need the address, maybe you would like to use the conference rooms, participate in some of the other things that happen here. It is definitely, if you have a need as an entrepreneur, this is a great place. And it's also built around a data center, and the facility and the data center is all owned by DartPoint. So if you have these types of issues that you need server space and some other things, this is a great place to be. And as I've always said, as it relates to the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, space certainly important, but let's say that you don't really need space. This is still a great place to be around entrepreneurial thinkers, entrepreneurial companies. If you have questions as a business owner, this is a great place to participate and be able to kind of have that kind of networking with folks that might, been there, done that, and can share some experiences with you. So if you are interested in more information on the deck, which is what we call it, you can go to DEC in Dublin.com, check it out, and reach out and see what the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center has for you. I am actually in the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center today, and this is where, again, we like to do this event. And as I mentioned before, today's guest, I've known Todd for, man, it's been a while. It's been probably 2000, somewhere between 2000 and 2003, 4, somewhere in there, I would guess. And, watched kind of the company morph and do some different things. And so, Todd, thanks for being here. This is going to be a really cool show.
Mike, I want to thank you first for having me. Say good morning to you and all the people listening. I certainly want to send a special shout out to SBDC and the Small Business Breakthroughs podcast that you do. I think it's a wonderful thing. And I would have to say, yes, our friendship does go back that far. And I have proof. This is a magazine that was that you spearheaded. That was back in 2009. It was a tie-in with Columbus CEO magazine, where you took people like myself and other entrepreneurs and basically highlighted us and asked us what were we doing. And this kinds again brings us back full circle to where we are today. So I'm happy to be here and answer any questions and hopefully give some insight to some people that are on a similar journey to what we were.
Yeah. I remember that. And it's one of the challenges for me, having done this for so long, that I can, and Tanya Wilson's on here, and she helps put on a lot of the events and the trainings that we do. And, she'll say, or one of our team will say, well, why don't we do X? And I'm like, we already did X. Yeah, but that was like 15 years ago. So in my mind, it doesn't click right. So, but anyway, it's, I remember that was a great opportunity. And, since Tanya's on here, Tanya, if you could get on that, we should start doing that again. So that'd be great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So Todd, let's kind of start, just kind of introduce yourself, briefly, and then we'll kind of jump into your entrepreneurial and business experience and kind of go from there. Mhm.
Okay, sounds good. To people who don't know, I'm Todd Wilson. I'm the CEO and president of Accelerated Laboratory Logistics, which is headquartered here in Columbus. And what we do are we move research laboratories throughout the United States. We started, actually, my grandfather started the company, which was known as Jacobson Son Moving and Storage in 1921. So we're actually 104 years old. And in the 90s, I changed the name to Accelerated Moving and Storage because we needed to make a pivot. And as a part of that, I had gone through the business. I started there when I was 15 years old. I paid my way through college. I went to Franklin University. I worked every day there. After Franklin, I went to work with Johnson and Johnson for several years. I was in Dayton, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh. Then I went to work for Beatrice International, and ultimately came back to Columbus and worked as a commercial property and liability representative for Liberty Mutual, selling policies to businesses. And one day I got a call from my uncle. This was probably in late 80s, 1988, 1989. And he said, "Hey, if you don't find your way back over here, we could be out of business." And I went to my boss and basically tendered my resignation, and um, wanted to be involved in seeing our family business continue.
How was it jumping in at that point? I mean, if they were at a point where, you know, they were hitting a challenge point, I mean,
Yeah.
how was it for you kind of jumping in there like that? Mhm.
Well, the reality of the situation, and the one thing, as you know, Mike, I will keep it totally honest here.
Yeah.
It was worse than what it was projected. What that phone call came as probably a last minute desperation phone call. But the business obviously was in bad shape. I don't think the year that I came back, as a matter of fact, I know for a fact, the year that I came back, we didn't do $100,000 worth of business. And again, this was back in 1989, 1990, and that year I went from making money, and that year that I came back, literally, I made $4,500. Now, fortunately, I had a place that I was able to. I had bought a apartment building that I had converted, and I was able to live in one of the units, right? But had it
Yeah.
not been for that, it wouldn't have worked. So to answer your question, we were in dire straits.
Yeah. It sounds like it. Um, so let me go back a little bit. Did you have
Yeah.
experience? What was your experience with the original company, with your grandfather owning it and things? I mean, did you kind of were you involved at all with that as a kid, or they have you moving stuff, or what?
Yeah. Yeah. What happened was they tried to get rid of me.
Okay.
So I was 15 years old, and they tried to work me so hard that I was going to break and then not like it. And it did the exact opposite. I loved it. That year, I got to go to Florida and Texas and Albuquerque, New Mexico. So by the time I came back, I thought I was an adult,
Yeah.
and I loved it. But the one thing that I did do was I took it serious. I took the fact that it was a family business, that I really had a lot of pride. And the other thing is, I wanted to learn everything I could about it. And, most people don't think of moving as a technical application, but I did. And really that helped me further after college and after coming back to the business, that I took it that way. Because if your company was founded in 1921, we had generations, literally decades of people that were experts in moving, right?
Right.
So I was able to learn from them, guys that I considered to be like my uncles, right? It's a small family business. And yeah, so I learned it from, as my uncle used to say, the only way you start at the top is if you're digging a well. So I started at the bottom, I ground it out, and I just ended up loving the business.
You know, that's interesting because, you know, you hear everything about, today's generation and stuff like that. And I don't buy into all of that, partially because I have kids that are that generation. But, there's a value to when, you know, you're starting up, you're going and having to grind it out.
Yeah,
I mean, that's literally the second time I've heard that today
yeah.
because I was talking to my son about some stuff and you've got to do that. And long term, that's going to make a big difference.
And it did. It did. So it made me think of, while I was in college, a lot of the papers that I did were revolved around the business,
Yeah.
marketing, advertising, business policy, anything that I could think of. That's how I kept myself engaged, right? And it just made me a better me. When I left, I was very confident. When I went out after college to get a job, when I was there, to answer your question, I started out as a mover. And then I did some admin work on the inside, understanding how to do the paperwork, bills of lading, things of that, understanding a little bit about accounting, enough to know that I didn't want to be an accountant.
Mhm.
Um, Marketing and sales, which I felt like that was something that I gravitated towards. Um, People who I love. I love people. I love to
Yeah.
learn. And I just met a lot of, I went to where my strengths were. And that's how the foundation of where we are today. But it all started back then.
Yeah. I think that's interesting too, because I think a lot of businesses
Mhm.
don't prep everybody to what the business does.
Right.
So, I know that like Stanley Steamer that does
Mhm.
carpet cleaning and stuff like that, you can be hired in as the CFO or whatever, but you're going to work on truck for a while
Yeah.
because you got to learn how the
Yeah.
business runs. Now, you may not be there forever, but
Yeah.
at least the fact that you've had to haul the equipment and you've had to do this, it's going to make a difference longer term. And being able to have that experience, I think has got to help the company when you've got folks like that.
Well, I drove the truck. I
Mhm.
looked at the jobs. I drove the truck. I drove straight trucks, tractor trailers, and did that for years. And even in what we're doing now, we actually pioneered a type of moving that really there was not prior to doing what we do nationally. Most people
Yeah.
would use a local mover, Allied, North American, Mayflower, United. And here comes this company um, from Ohio
Right.
getting jobs in places like Texas, Florida, California, Indiana, um, learning the business from the bottom up really helped me to be able to understand our customer better, understand our internal customer, our employees, to be able to talk to them in a way that I wasn't superior, that we're all on the same team,
Right.
understanding that your employees are your business because without them, you're nothing,
Mhm.
and valuing them. And I do.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your experience kind of after college before and how that's impacted you. So you mentioned a couple of places that you worked, but you worked in a environment that was kind of sales oriented.
Right.
And I think that's got to be a real positive too, as you then moved into, a leadership position with the company.
My sales background was amazing and invaluable. To be able to work with some companies that I work with, I think you have to have a background or some experiences to bring to the table. And, working with, as I said, a Johnson and Johnson, a Beatrice International, uh, Liberty Mutual, all really gave me the foundation and confidence to feel like I could go in and go after some of our customers, and to think of the business, again, our small business. I looked at it, Mike, as a bigger business. My goal wasn't to have a small business and continue to run a small business. My goal was, how do I take this company, Jacobs and Son? What do we have to do? And I wanted to give it fresh eyes. And I knew that we need to make a pivot because
Right.
at that time, um, when I met you back then, you were at the chamber,
Right.
right? And guys like Mike Gordon, Ty Marsh, uh, uh, Dwight Smith. There were some people there that really helped me to really think about thinking about how we would be a better and bigger company, right?
Right.
And that's how I did it. So my sales background, being from a larger company, I didn't want to be small, but I knew that we needed to grow. And the one thing that we had was, at that time, there were 79 moving companies within a 30-mile radius of downtown Columbus, right? So if
Yeah.
you go to someone's house and you knock on the door, you introduce yourself, and if you just happen to ask a qualifying question like, "Hey, Mike, just out of curiosity, how many movers have you had?" "Oh, Todd, you're my 13th," right? Come on, the handwriting's on the wall. I'm not getting your business, right?
Yeah.
Unless I strictly am providing price, right?
Right.
And just if you just provide price, you cannot win. So for any entrepreneurs out there that are listening, if price is your sole motivation, getting a low price is your sole motivation to being successful, that is a losing battle. You will lose
Yeah.
that battle because you cannot undercut everyone, and you can't provide the best service at the lowest price. It's just an impossibility. So what we started doing was looking at the business as a brand new business. What do we have to do? And the one thing that we needed to do was, and this caused a lot of problems in my family, was changing the business from Jacobs and Son, which it was a family name, right,
Right.
to Accelerated Moving and Storage, right, which later became Accelerated Laboratory Logistics.
Right.
That was terrible. I mean, just internally, I had family members that just literally would not talk to me. Now, subsequently, when things, they start to see why you do it, it worked out. But at that particular time, it was pretty tough. So when I looked at the business, Mike, not only did we need to change the name, we needed to change who we were. We couldn't be, you can't be, if I said, and I would have people say, "Well, Todd, how good are you at moving? Are you the best mover in the city?" "Yeah." "Are you the best mover in the county? Are you the best mover in the state? Are you the best mover in the Midwest?" And if every answer is yes, then people go like, "Why aren't you national?" Right? And that got me to open up my eyes like, yeah, why am I not national? Right? But we just didn't have a product to sell, right? And that's when I really started thinking about, we can move a higher grade of product. Why don't we go into an area that might be somewhat inflation proof? And what is that area? Healthcare,
Right.
research. Now that was very naive of me. And I know we were talking earlier about how you do things. We were talking about the podcast, right? Where
Yeah.
you do things and you think, you get it together. The bottom
Mhm.
line was, the more I thought that I knew about lab moving, the less I knew about lab moving. So I would go into one type of a lab, Mike, and it might be chemicals. I go into another lab, it could require rigging. I go into another, it could require biological specimens, right?
Yeah.
And that's just to name a few. I mean, there's
Mhm.
tons of them. What we had to do was come up with a company that could address each and every one of those labs, so that no matter where we were in the United States, our people could do it. If they needed to be certified to move chemicals, they could do it. If they needed to be certified to be able to operate generators, provide loaner liquid nitrogen dewars, -80 freezers, they could do it. If they needed to rig optics tables, they could do it. And that's why we took the slow and steady approach to creating a business model that would hopefully get us another 100 years from now.
Right. Sure. We do have a question. So if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. Um, so Sylvia Garrett had asked a question about your name change. I mean, how you mentioned that it was a challenge. I mean, one, I guess how long did it take everybody to get on board, and what did it really take to get everybody on board with this?
Well, first of all, hello to Sylvia Garrett, whom I know. She's wonderful and has a wonderful business.
Yeah.
Um, the name change, it took a while. Internally, we had to reintroduce ourselves. It wasn't that we were reintroducing ourselves as much as it was we were introducing ourselves as a new company, right? We were not going to be the same household mover that we were. That wasn't the business that we were going to compete for. We were going to go after this other business, which was the lab business. Now, the reality of that is when you are changing your business from one type of business to another, it takes time to answer your question. So, what happens is if you're a household mover and your goal is to get to the far right and be a laboratory mover, it's a progression because we have to introduce ourselves to these people and say, hey, this is what we do. We had to learn it. So we had a large capital investment. We had to get our people trained. I went to our attorneys, um, uh, uh, Chris Bobbitt, and I asked him, hey, Chris, do you know anybody that can train us on how to move chemicals or biological specimens? And he said, well, what do you want to do that for? You're a household mover. And I said, I don't want to be a household mover, right? So I ended up meeting a guy who's a dear friend of mine, Barry Johnston. And over 25 years ago, he came in and trained us on how to segregate, pack, and move chemicals. By the way, it's his birthday today. Um, this guy was amazing and has been a close friend and confidant, advisor, mentor to me and throughout. So it took a while. We had to commercially go into places like Ohio State. I couldn't even get into Ohio State when I was the family business. When I went in under this company was right at that juncture. We were able to break in, which was
Yeah.
a good for us. But it took a while. Family wise, it probably took 7 or 8 years.
Really.
Employees grasped onto it right away and could understand what we were doing. But it did take a moment for everyone to kind of get on board and understand that what we were and what we were going to be was going to be dramatically different.
Mhm. You know, when you talk about making the shift, so
Mhm.
I'm talking about the accelerated moving and storage to the accelerated lab equipment shift.
Mhm.
So, you know, to really change markets, and it's like you said, I mean, you're really kind of becoming a new company with what you're doing. I think sometimes though, people and entrepreneurs, they decide, okay, for maybe very legitimate reasons, we're going to pivot. And
Yeah.
their concept of pivoting is, just let me maybe change the name and I'm going to go this way versus going this way. And, you talked about this being a progression to be able to do it properly. And I was interested in, you know, because obviously if you get into the lab equipment, I think we had this conversation 20 years ago, you can't just go walk in there and start moving the stuff.
That's
So
right.
your focus on training and certification and getting these folks ready when you may not even have had the business on the books that needed this, but you knew that's where you were going to go.
Yes. So what we did was, Mike, we made an investment into the pieces of equipment that we were going to move. So we actually, and to this day, we still have it at our facility. We have about 3,000 square feet of training facility, and it
Okay.
is a mock-up. It looks exactly like a laboratory. It's got everything you would see. It's got the lab benches. It's got an eye wash station. It's got biosafety cabinets, refrigerators, freezers, liquid nitrogen dewars, centrifuges, microscopes. I mean, literally everything that we see, we bought. And we started moving that and getting people acclimated to what this was. And as I said, it was a large capital investment. And it was one where we had to make a commitment that this was the direction we were going to go in and we were not going to go back. So some people may say, I'll pivot. I don't know. I've got cold feet. I'm going to go back to what we were.
Yeah.
Really, we were in uncharted territory and it was okay. And, sometimes they talk about risk and reward. Well, it worked. We took a risk and there was a reward, but we were all in. I was all in as the owner. Our employees bought in. They started feeling better about themselves because they weren't just a household mover anymore, right? What were
Mhm.
they becoming? Laboratory relocation specialists, right?
Right.
And, their walk was different, their talk was different. And when I say that, we even went through soft skills, right? Not
Right.
just how do you move equipment, but you're in there moving with researchers and administrators. Obviously, they're going to talk to our people at some point. So we had to go and actually have soft skill
Mhm.
training where we educate the people. When was the business founded? How was it founded? Who are some of our customers? Where do we go? How long have you worked at the business? We had to train our employees, right, to be
Right.
able to be a walking advertisement for us other than just moving pieces from point A to point B.
Yeah, no, that's a great point too, because I think a lot of times the small business owners, they just get so focused up here and they don't dig down into the piece that, it's all about people. It's about the people that you have there and about the people that you're doing the business for. And in having this high-end kind of customer service available, when they have a customer service, they got to know what they're talking about. And if you're doing, I would guess, if you're doing lab equipment, you've got to be able to talk to people in a language that they're familiar with. And talk about the stuff and what you're doing.
Being able to go into a laboratory and say, what is a desiccator or a mass spectrometer or a gas chromatograph, electron scanning microscope, the fact that you could look at it and talk to them about it
Mhm.
and made them feel a lot better
Yeah.
about who was
Mm.
handling their equipment when someone else would come into the room and say, does that thingamajig over there go? What about the whatchamacallit? And I'm thinking to myself, I think I've got this job. And you know, people they gravitate towards you because they have a confidence level as well. They're like, okay, hold on for a second. This guy is talking my language, right? And all that came from, you know, good mentors, good people. You know, we had a great banker, Iris Cooper, who was amazing,
Right.
and would talk about customers, customer service. A lot of people understanding your customer, and that's what you're saying, really,
Yeah. Right.
is if you understand your customer and can relate to your customer. I've got a little story I want to get out real quick. I did a move for Ohio State very early on, and there was a guy, he was just a researcher at the time, right? And we're doing a move for him, and he's like, Todd, um, man, isn't there any kind of way that you guys can move these refrigerators and freezers without taking all my stuff out and then putting them on dry ice? Now, this was back in the 90s. Now,
Okay.
there are companies today in 2023, 2024, 2025 that still put items on dry ice, and they lose samples every year, every year. But this guy said to me back then, isn't there a way to do that? That guy was Mike Caligiuri. Mike Caligiuri went on to run the James in the cancer hospital over at Ohio State University.
Okay.
This is how things can build when someone that you know or talk to, right? And I talked to him literally about a month ago. He's now retired and living in Puerto Rico. But the bottom line is I listened to him. I went back and I did action. And that action helped us secure more business. But again, it goes to what you're saying. You really have to dive in and understand the product that you're moving. And at that time, we didn't know anything. I didn't know the difference between a dissecting microscope and an electron microscope. It's just a daggone microscope, right? But you have to understand it. And I think that's the thing. And once we started to understand that, then, like today, we're sending out a quote to NASA, right?
Right.
Those little steps that we took then have allowed us to do the type of moves that we do today.
Right. So I want to take like 20 years of time here and just let you talk 20. I mean, what's been, what we talked about a lot of the pieces, but I mean, you've been doing this for a long time and, you've been working over the last 20 plus years with this industry. What's been your experience or how have you kind of worked to grow your business over that 20 years? Because again, you're not just dealing with Ohio State. And when you and I talked a couple weeks ago, I mean, you're traveling all the time. You're outside of Columbus doing a lot of business.
Yeah.
So what's kind of been over this time? I mean, your experience of growing it, broadening it out, doing what you need to do.
Well, currently, 86% of our business is outside of the state of Ohio, right? So there are areas and cities that do tons more research than they do in Columbus, Ohio, or even the state of Ohio. For me, the thing was we wanted to go into it for the long play.
Yeah.
And the long play for us meant that we wanted to create a foundation. I know this is going to sound crazy when I say this to people, but although we have grown over the past 20 years, this year is the first year that we are really looking to scale the business, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And the reason was because, as I said, there's probably 7 variations of laboratories. And when you have a crew that's out, let's say, for instance, we have a crew in New Mexico and we have a job, they're leaving a job there and they need to go to Berkeley, right? That takes time to develop those people. And you're talking about a commitment that when we go out and do these jobs, like this job for NASA, the job is going to take 6 months to do. When the move crew gets there, they'll be there anywhere between 3 and 4 months. Well, they have to get back, they have to see their families and those types of things. That is a commitment, right?
Right.
It's very difficult to try to find that and get those kind of individuals. So a lot of people that we have been here for a while. It's taken us a while to retain them, understand their importance, that we're not looking to turn over people. People like, why would you take that? Why would you go for that? Because that person is difficult to replace. If you feel like you can do a quick hire and a quick fire, that position is probably not critical.
Yeah.
But it takes years for people to understand the equipment that we're moving, to be able to trust them, and the fact that they're literally moving people's life research. If you're a researcher and you've been working in an area, and let's say it's brain tumors, and you've been keeping samples for 30 years, can you imagine getting a phone call that someone lost your 30-year samples of research, it would be disastrous, right?
Right.
But it happens every day because there are people that want to be a player and there are people that are committed like us to being a player. And you can only be a player if you've got people that you can insert into that business and that job that can do it. So it's taken us a while to get these people, but now I think we're, like I said, I really feel confident this year and next year, even with what's going on in the business, uh, in, politically as well. They're looking to cut back funding, right? For us, that just means there's going to be more of an opportunity for private enterprise, and public corporations will take over more of the funding as opposed to NIH for research moving forward.
Right. So that kind of leads me to the next question I have. Um,
Mhm.
how have you, with the business, dealt with the ups and downs of the economy? And you just referenced, some of these other uh, political funding type of pieces. But I mean, we had a downturn in 2000. We had a downturn in 2008, which was pretty significant. There's
Yeah,
been smaller downturns as they've kind of gone through here that
yeah,
can, put bit. I mean, I've seen that 2008, I saw businesses that were really good businesses
yeah,
that they were out.
yeah. We were almost one.
Yeah.
We were almost one. Let me tell you what happened. First of all, I will say this: no matter how hard you work, no matter what you do, I always believe that God has something in store for you, no matter what you do. It takes effort, right? But there's something, if you want to call it divine intervention or what have you. So we had a building, we had a 30,000 square foot building that we had for sale, and in 2008, right? But I bought a larger building because the building that we were in, even though it was 30,000 square feet, I had 17 trailers full of storage that I needed to be brought inside, right? So I went and guess what I did? I bought a bigger building. You know, now that I have this other building, I'll just sell my other building, the smaller building, right? Well, that's when the real estate bubble hit, right?
Right.
So I had a piece of property that I had for sale, and believe, lo and behold, I did sell it.
Yeah.
I sold it for $700,000 less than I was originally marking it up for. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Now, not only was that a hit, as you said, it put a lot of good companies out of business. We were almost one because we really had to find a way. Ultimately, I was able to get the person, I leased the 30,000 square foot building out. I was able to negotiate a price with them. I had to pay a hefty penalty, right, in order to make it happen. But what it did was it allowed me to continue on in the fight, right? It
Right.
didn't take me out, but it was tough. But in addition to that, um, we just really focused on Mike being really good for our customers, and again, understanding that we needed to do business outside of the city, right?
Right.
And once we understood that, and that was at the same time, like I said, the article that I held up earlier was from 2009,
Right.
right? But I think the thing is that we said that we just need a bigger pond. If we're only doing X amount of dollars in Columbus, Ohio, can I go to Michigan? Can I go to West Virginia? Can I go to Indiana, Pennsylvania? And we started to incrementally inch our way out of Columbus. And then after that, we got a nice project at Notre Dame, which we're doing another project for them right now. 230,000 square foot brand new building. We're moving everything for them. We started picking up other projects, but in the meantime, I was doing jobs at Ohio State,
Yeah.
right? Almost every new laboratory building that's at OSU, the James, uh, the heart and lung, the physics research building, the chemistry building. So at the same time, while there was an economic downturn, these projects were fully funded at that time, right?
Right.
So I did have some large projects that got us through the hump, because they were funded. Now, what's going to happen now that they're cutting funding, right? Remains to be seen. But these projects that we're looking at now, um, are going to get us through. But we are going to have to probably make another pivot. And I think other businesses, people that are listening, um, are going to need to make another pivot. What else can I do? What else, how can I think out of the box? And I think
Right.
that's what we have to do. That's what we did to answer your question. We just had to think out of the box. How do we do this?
Yeah. Right. For sure. And so kind of my last kind of business question here, because I want
Yeah.
to move on to the museum, but
Okay.
um, you've mentioned some pretty smart people. What did you, how did you leverage mentors in helping you with this? You mentioned Dwight, you mentioned Mike Gordon. I mean, both of them are super sharp guys. Michael, I would say, is probably my biggest mentor. Um, and how did you leverage that, and how do you recommend um, newer entrepreneurs, small business owners jump in there and take advantage of that? You mentioned Iris too, which is another great mentor.
Yeah, she's great. So Donna and Larry James, Iris, Bob Duncan, Eldon Ward, Otto Beatty, who schooled me early on. Um, Bookkeepers, like we got a company called Biz by Georgie. She's great. Paul Patterson, Ty, as I said, these people are the people that really get you through the tough times. And if you have a business, you're going to be in tough times.
Right.
And as you said before, you said, how do you handle these undulations of ups and downs? It's great when you're up, and then it seems awful when you're down. But the thing is to remember there will be another up. And to,
Right.
what do you have to do to get through it? These people were amazing to me. I mean, I still talk to them, and even new people. I just was together with Mike Flowers the other day,
Yeah.
who's wonderful.
Hmm.
Curtis Jewell, right? Um, People at the other locations like the Conway Center for Family Business,
Right.
right? I lean on these people and I look, even though they may not think that I'm paying attention to what they do, right? I
Right.
do. And that's what gets me through. And the other thing is to be able to, to work from a position of integrity, and keep your word and do what you say. Like I said, I'm out, like as you said, I'm out of business. I just out of business. I'm out of town doing business. And I just literally got back yesterday. I was in New York, but the week before that, I was in West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. The week before that, I was in Texas and Arizona. Our business is all over, and we chase the business wherever it is. Wherever someone wants me to come and either consult or quote or move, I'm there. All they have to do is call me up, and I come and do it. And that investment pays off. But these people really challenge me to be bigger, to be better, and to they're just good people. I
Yeah.
think that's the one thing. Just surround yourself like yourself. You're great. I mean, when we reconnect, it's always good.
Yeah.
So being able to have people as a sounding board that you trust and can help you through the tough times, that's that's the best thing ever.
Absolutely. So I want to shift here a little bit. I want to talk about the Columbus Museum of African American History and Culture. So why don't you tell us about that?
Well, I'm very excited, and my father was a Tuskegee Airman.
Okay.
And when I was in school, elementary school, I remember coming home one day and he asked me, he said, "Hey, what do you what are you studying?" And I said, "American history." And he said, "Well, what period?" I said, "Second World War." And he said, "Oh, okay." He said, "Have you ever heard of the He said, "What did they tell you about the Tuskegee Airmen?" And I was like, "Tuskegee Airmen? Who is that?" And he said, "Well, it was a a group of Black fighter and bomber pilots, right, in Tuskegee, Alabama, of which he never told me until later that he was Tuskegee Airman, right? And
Right.
he was a master mechanic for them and was telling me about all the people that were there. But ultimately, what he said to me was, and it always stuck with me, Mike, was you need to have some self awareness and do some self study because everything you learn in school may not be everything there is to know, right? And I
Right.
took that to heart. So, about, I want to say 35, 40 years ago, I, in conjunction with our family who had started collecting some items, really took it into another gear. And we were determined to create the Columbus Museum of African American History and Culture. We actually filed that name with the Secretary of State in 2009, right? That's how long ago we had thought about it. And then it was just about developing a collection. Today, we have about 3,200 original artifacts. We're hosting an event this evening for the firefighters of Columbus are coming out to the facility, but we have people come through every month. Last year we had just a little bit. I think we were about maybe 30 or 40 people shy of 2,000 visitors to the museum, but it's in our facility at 4001 Refugee Road. Uh, we invite people to come and host events, whether you are 3 people or 100 people. We welcome them out there. There's a place to have food, sit down. We'll do a little learning tutor session or something that they want to know about. But
Mhm.
uh, that's what it is, and it's everything. It goes all the way back. I think some of our earliest pieces go back to the 1700s.
So this is great. I wasn't aware of this. So
Hmm.
I like to take our team on field trips, like from the conference room down to the ground floor, and let's go look at this room. So maybe we need to take a bigger field trip and come out
Come
there.
out. Hey,
But anyway,
listen,
cool. Mhm.
come out. I mean, the one thing about it is what we want to do, and the whole goal of having the museum, Mike, was again, there's a perception and a reality.
Right.
A perception and a reality. And the reality trumps the perception so much. I mean, I'm still baffled to this day. The accomplishments of the African American community, right, is immense. It just got kind of, we keep talking about the same people, and it's larger than that. It's bigger than Frederick Douglass. It's bigger than Martin Luther King. It's bigger. And, we have people that go back. I mean, Peter Salem and Salem Poor were in the Revolutionary War. People never even heard of these people. They literally are heroes. Some of these, the towns where they were, actually erected statues for these people, right? We're talking about Black men and women that have statues for their input in this country. It's the same thing with the Civil War, the First World War, and the Second World War. As my dad said, and he was correct. If I didn't do some self study, and when you learn about it, you feel better about it, and people feel better about it, and it's a way for us to share information that we otherwise don't know. I don't know a lot about Hispanic culture. I
Yeah.
don't know much about the Jewish faith or culture. I don't. Not because I don't want to. And there's a lot of people out there that don't know about Black America.
Mhm.
And our goal is to educate them and to inspire them, but to tell them, hey, these are some things that were here and said, but here's the reality of the situation. And once we do that, then I feel like, from a legacy perspective, I've done my job.
Right. The artifacts and things, where did these come from? I mean, is this kind of a wherever, or is it focused?
You know, that is the one thing, Mike, I love about what I do, right?
Yeah.
I told you all those cities that I go to.
Yeah.
Every time that I would go, I would venture out, and pieces come from everywhere. They come from Arizona and California, and the Dakotas and Massachusetts. Literally, I think maybe shy of maybe 4 states in the United States. There's artifacts that have been gathered from all of them. And they're all original. That's the thing. So we're talking a document of emancipation is original. If we're talking about a pay registry, it's original. Phototypes, tintypes, daguerreotypes, toys,
Right.
um, anti-slavery pamphlets. I mean, you name it, it's there.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing that I think that is great about this is that, you know, it is history.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes, you mentioned it earlier, history gets kind of pigeonholed. It's right here.
Yeah.
Here's the experience, from the founders. Here's some experience from others. Here's experience, from Civil War and the slaves and different things of that nature. But it's very compartmentalized, and I don't think people get an opportunity to see a broader array.
Yeah.
And if you get something like this, I mean, it's a major part of history. And the more we know about all of the history, the
Yes.
better we're all going to be able to make this country continue to move forward. Hmm.
We need to capture what you just said
Yeah.
and post that because that is exactly how it works.
Right.
And, you know, we need more people to have that kind of open-mindedness and understanding that we're all together. You know, and I know that they say the United States, and we look at it as these physical things, but the United States are the people that are in it. And if you
Right.
took out the African American story,
Mhm.
the history of the United States would look a lot different than what it does today. So I think the one thing that we want to do is get people to understand that you know that there are heroes, that there were 5,000 troops that fought in the Revolutionary War, 200,000 that fought in the Civil War, and that doesn't even include the people that assisted to do things like carpenters, um, stevedores that worked on ships,
Right.
stable hands, cooks. Doesn't even include them, which would be maybe another, I don't know, 150,000. So you're now talking about 300 plus thousand people, African Americans that participated in the Civil War, right? These are the stories that, again, you don't read it in a book, but it's in books. It's just not in the books that were in schools. And when people come out and we're understanding that exactly what you said, people walk out and their eyes are open. Some people tear up. Some people will walk out and come back because there are, you know, there's negative caraturizations there. There's positives. And the whole point is for people to understand the fabric of what we have. So it's very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. So, she had to jump off, but Sylvia said that her and Kent are looking forward to checking it out. So you need to reach out to her.
I will do that. I will do that.
So where do people find out more information about this?
You can go online to the Columbus Museum of African American History and Culture, or you can contact me directly at area code 614-348-2862, Todd Wilson. But you go to our website, which I'm actually meeting with our web designer tomorrow on that. There will be some updates on that. But we're very excited. I'm excited about what we're doing at Accelerated. I'm excited about what we're doing at the museum. I'm excited to be here in Columbus, Ohio, which is getting ready to go through a huge transformation
Mhm.
and population boom.
Right.
So I'm very excited, Mike. And again, I want to thank you for having me on. And it's always great to see you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I agree. I appreciate, everything you're doing in an entrepreneurship standpoint, because I said I think that individual businesses unto themselves can make a big difference. And if
Yeah.
everybody's doing what they need to do, then they can make a huge difference. But I also see, my experience with you is we talk about these other mentors, but I mean, my experience with you, where you're always willing to share, always willing to support, give feedback, do different things. And I think the thing that always amazes me is that you're actually willing to answer the phone. I can call you and you will answer the phone. If you're
Yeah,
not on a plane,
yeah,
you'll be able to.
yeah.
So,
Well, listen, do you know Melinda Carter?
yeah. Hmm.
Melinda Carter has been great. She's been like
Hmm.
my right arm.
Right.
I met her years ago when she was working with Otto
Yeah.
Beatty. Um, and she's involved with Accelerated. She's
Okay.
involved with the museum, and she's just been, I mean, just super fantastic. Um, Having people, just as you just said a second ago, that's what makes this journey so much fun,
Yeah.
right? Because we're doing it together, and like we're doing this together right now, and that's what makes it fun for me. So, like I said, thank you.
Sure. Well, again, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. Um, for anybody who's here and wants to kind of check it out, it will be put on our YouTube channel. If you go to Ohio SBDC, you'll be able to find playlist with all of the small business breakthroughs on. This one will probably be up in a couple of days. And I also want to mention that we have a special edition of the Small Business Breakthrough on Wednesday, March 19th. That's a little bit earlier than we normally do it. It'll be at 11:30 like normal. This is going to be for SBDC Day. This is a national day to showcase the SBDC, but actually showcase the folks that are in the trenches helping folks and the folks that got assistance too. So we are excited that on SBDC Day, we will actually have Tanya Wilson, who is part of our team, and Tanya is going to be talking about her experience with marketing. Tanya does marketing training for individuals for our center. And I think that she's got some really great great philosophy and tools as it relates to marketing that I think will make a big difference. So Tanya's going to jump on with us on the 19th. So be sure you check out the website, which is sbdccolumbus.com, and get yourself registered for that. So again, Todd, really appreciate it. Always great to see you.
Same
And
here.
I want everybody to have a great day. And thank you for being here for Small Business Breakthroughs. Thanks.